Hello, my name is Michael Randolph, and I'm very excited to share with you our most recent initiative in West Tampa. We titled it West Tampa Home-Based E-Commerce Project. It focuses on creating home-based businesses by way of e-commerce. It is the fastest growing industry. Our approach to community development is based on people, place, and things, moving from distress to success. There are two types of planning. One is poor planning, and that leads to gentrification. Some of the characteristics of poor planning include outward planning. That is where the planning is focused on from the outside. And exclusionary, meaning that most time people are not part of the planning and they tend to be gentrified. The other type of planning is called smart planning. And it leads to transformation or transformation of people. It is inclusionary in that it includes the very people in the community to make sure that they are also transformed in order to prosper from the redevelopment. It is inward in that it looks inside and builds from the outside. We're going to talk a little bit later about why that's so very important. So what is a CDC? I mentioned we're the West Tampa CDC. Well, the federal government defines a CDC as a private nonprofit corporation that's governed by a board of directors, consisting of residents, businesses that focus on planning, developing, and implementing community development activities. Well, one of the functions of a community development corporation is to deliver economic development. Because of that, the federal government, by way of Health and Human Services, has designated a special amount of money that goes to only community development corporations in order to do economic development and especially poor communities. So let me give a little bit information about me. Again, my name is Michael Randolph, and I'm with the West Tampa CDC. I want to give some background. So I have over 35 years in working in community development, economic development, and business development. That training came by way of Health and Human Services on a federal level, and that training consists of community economic development. Next in line is Housing and Community Development, which is HUD. My training from HUD includes community real estate development, strategic planning. Enterprise community partners, and it should be capitalized, is one of the national nonprofits that focus on economic and community development. My training with the Enterprise Foundation, again, it's a national corporation, include community comprehensive planning, strategic planning, financial management training, and some of the training they provided included presenters from Yale, Princeton, Harvard, University of Baltimore, as well as the University of Maryland. In fact, they trained me so well, they brought me back years later to be a consultant to help develop one of the communities that they were in. The other training comes from the Local Initiative Support Corporation. This training came by way of community real estate development, financial management, and community real estate development. Bank of America provides training in terms of the real estate development and financial as well as business development. University of Florida provides training in terms of real estate development. They gave a certification in their community real estate development. The other training came from FAMU, and that training came by way of entrepreneurship training. Coupled with that is training from the Community Business Association as well as SCORE. From this knowledge that I gathered over the years, I was then later asked to speak at the University of South Florida twice to their students on community development, as well as the Johns Hopkins University and Baltimore, Maryland twice, again to their grad students on community development. Let's look at the model, the West Tampa CDC model. Well, the model again is a community comprehensive initiative approach. It starts with the community who are the shareholders. The community then empowers the West Tampa CDC to act on its behalf in order to bring about its vision. In order for the West Tampa CDC to bring about this vision, it partners with other nonprofits, the government, the private sector, institutions of higher learning, and others, in order to bring about its threefold strategy in terms of rebuilding the community. It focuses on economic development, social development, and physical development. And you can see over the years, all the partners that we're connected to. For the purpose of this presentation, we're going to focus on economic development. The West Tampa CDC approached community development using what's known as an asset mapping strategy. This strategy synthesizes three community disciplines: neighborhood planning, community organizing, and economic development into a single methodology for community revitalization. What's different about this approach? Well, most approaches to community development, and we talked about poor planning early on in the presentation, at least to gentrification. So there's two models that one can use. One is called a need assessment model, in which most organizations that outside come in use this assessment. And that assessment is that it appears to impose standards. It is driven by outside agency. It views residents as programs or clients, and it continues the outflow of community resources. I want to say again, outflow. Well, asset mapping looks at it from a different perspective. It focuses on existing capacity, increasing. It is relationship driven. It promotes self-sufficiency, and it recycles resources in the community. Okay, let's talk about community mapping. And this is one of the major problems. Households or poor neighborhoods are rarely perceived as an asset. Instead, they are often seen as recipients of social service and crime programs. In contrast, an asset building approach to community development begins by focusing on the potential opportunity for development, not the deficiencies. How does it do this? Well, the primary goal of an asset mapping approach and neighborhood revitalization is to create a local economy with resources, monetary as well as social, that are circulated within the local community, magnifying that impact and making economic growth possible. Neighborhood residents can assume many roles in the local economy. Okay, let's talk about a little bit more. Contrary to the conventional assumption that inner city neighborhoods are poor markets, some studies suggest that the issue is not the lack of income, but its use and expenditure pattern. For example, if the local economy is to flourish, residents' income should be spent in ways that support neighborhood activities. Okay, what's the final outcome? The final outcome, the key to revitalization is mobilizing whatever assets exists among residents within the community. What is the final product? The final product of an assets mapping effort is a healthy local economy characterized by the recirculation of money, a high rate of employment among residents, ownership of local businesses by residents. We're going to talk about that as part of our initiative, ownership of local businesses. It includes patronization of local businesses by neighborhood households and an active, connected community. So what are some of the resources that we're going to use in order to fund this initiative and other initiatives? Because this initiative that we're going to present today is going to result in us bringing in over $80 million of new money and new investment in the West Tampa community over the next 5 years. So some of the resources that we're going to use for funding or vehicles for funding include new market taxes, private sectors, community development, financial institutions, fundraising, etc. Well, let's talk about it in detail. Our approach is simple. We have to create a business model. And our model of social entrepreneurship is the ability to fund the future of nonprofits through a combination of earned income, charitable contributions, and public sector subsidies. The earned income is used to pursue social objectives by simultaneously seeking both financial and social return on investment. We're using a whole new approach. We are looking at a new school, next generation approach. Let's talk about input on this particular chart right here. Input consists of any money that's coming in. This is related to revenue. We're bringing in money in terms of grants, social media, fee for services, on down to investments and financial security. The money that's brought in then is going into output. Output includes employment services, public safety, youth, on down to neighborhood revitalization. The outcomes then is to increase the quality of life. That is increase employment, increase business opportunity for residents to own their business, and increase affordable housing, a reduction of crime, and generally improve quality of life for residents. The benefits. Well, a high return on your investment. It increases the tax base by creating businesses for sales taxes. It reduces the amount of city services because it reduces public safety issues. Increases public safety issues. It reduces the risk for lenders. And it also increases return on investments for investors. And generally, it improves the quality of life. So let's talk about our current project, which is the West Tampa Home-Based Community Project. I'm going to say it again. Both home-based and e-commerce is the fastest growing businesses in the industry. So what are our focus areas? And what have the community told us? Well, they told us that they wanted us to reduce gentrification, the impact, increase public safety by providing services to those with criminal records, at-risk youth, and others, increase the sales taxes for the community by creating businesses that pay sales taxes, increase resident generational wealth by providing residents opportunity to start their own business, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. The other thing is to attract investors, lenders, and developers, listen to this, that focus on mixed income. I'm sorry, that should be mixed to say fixed, but it's that focus on mixed income housing for workforce, mixed income housing for workforce for the blue collar worker. It's also focused on increasing community wealth, and we'll talk about increasing community wealth a little bit later on. The fact of the matter is that within 5 miles, that's over 250,000 potential customers. Within 10 miles, that's 500,000. And within 20 miles, that's nearly 1 million people. That is the money. And this is the program to get some of that money. Within the next 5 years, we plan to work with residents to start over 120 home-based / e-commerce businesses that residents will actually own. Because of that, within the next 5 years, there will be an additional 125 jobs created as a result of those 120 new businesses. Of that number, 44 businesses will be full-time and 80 will be part-time businesses. We're talking about an economic impact of 3 to 5 million. Now, part of the initiative is to begin to create a community database in which we're able to connect businesses to potential opportunities in the community. This database is going to have 2 purposes. First, to identify all of the skill sets that's in West Tampa and to connect them to jobs, and then to connect all of the businesses in West Tampa and connect them to opportunities in West Tampa with community development. Now, what does the class consist of? Well, it consists of professional business planning, training, and operation. That's going to be anywhere from 8 to 15 week training. It's going to connect community businesses to opportunities, because starting these businesses and not provide them with the opportunity, especially with so much redevelopment in West Tampa, doesn't make sense. So we're definitely going to connect them to businesses. We also plan to connect them to government procurement, because that's another way of bringing them money. We plan to do everything necessary to take them to the next step. In addition to connecting them with mentors, either by way of SCORE or the SBA. Now, the software that we're going to be using is known as Business Professional. I think it's called Business Pro Planning. It's a good software. In addition to that, we're going to be using resources from both SCORE and the SBA. They have a ton of information related to businesses, and we're going to use that resource, including resources from YouTube and the internet on what works. All that information then will be brought back into the classroom so we can discover what we learned from SBA, from YouTube, from the internet, on businesses. How do we apply it to the specific business that you want to run? Now, in terms of helping the businesses be successful, we're looking at providing them with tablets or computers. We're working with them in terms of getting micro loans and grants in order to get started. Software includes a business pro for them to have to do that business plan. In addition, providing monies and equipment and supplies. Internet, legal service, including giving them fees to start incorporate, be it an LLC or a corporation, and others. Keep in mind that these are going to be home-based businesses for the most part. So they're going to be operating out of the home. So therefore, they're going to need this right here in order to do that business. And I say operating out of the home, meaning that no business comes to their home. That is, it's a home-based business, but they do provide business outside. Okay, now we're going to take this information, we're going to take the money that's gathered from this initiative, and then we're going to go after some serious money to bring in over $80 million in economic investment impact into the West Tampa community. How are we going to do this? Well, the first thing we're going to do, and we talked about it earlier, is going after the community economic development funds at the federal level by way of health and human services. That's up to an $800,000 grant. And we fit that grant to the T. The next one, in fact, we've been trained by them. The next strategy or the next funding source is going to be lenders. That's what we plan to get up to 8 million, maybe as high as 15 million. Based on the most recent data provided by the Hillsborough County Commission on the inequities in our communities, what they found was that both in West Tampa and in East Tampa, the African American community has been targeted. And there has been rampant redlining in those communities. And as a result, we maintain that's why we got so much crime, drugs, violence, and that nature. That being the case with that adding 8 million up, we're going to use that 8 million now to put in a plan to bring in $80 million. This is going to be a partnership between the private and the public sector, in addition to going after community block grant and community social service block grant money. It is time for West Tampa. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation and having us an opportunity to share with you how we plan to change the narrative and make West Tampa a community of choice for its residents. But more importantly, to make sure that the residents of West Tampa also benefit from the transformation of redevelopment that's going on in West Tampa. And that benefit includes the mother, who's the single head of household, the low income, and as well as those who are marginalized in the community. Thank you so much. We plan to change the narrative in West Tampa. It's time for West Tampa. Thank you.